That is the economic contrast we're going to draw against Donald Trump, whose only economic policies for his second term is more tax breaks for the ultra wealthy, more corporate giveaways. Moody's is now saying that Donald Trump's economic policies would spike inflation and likely cause another recession in 2025. Okay. So that's the choice that the American people are going to see on the debate stage.
I would say this: you represent your boss very well and make a good case, and we'll see how all of those issues are dealt with tonight.
A top Biden campaign official was just interviewed on the Fox propaganda network and did so well that the pro-Trump Fox host interviewing him conceded that he made a very compelling case to re-elect President Biden, which in turn triggered convicted felon Donald Trump. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. But yeah, Michael Tyler, who is basically the director of communications for the Biden-Harris campaign, was interviewed by the Fox propaganda network, specifically Dana Perino, a pro-Trump Republican operative. She was the press secretary for President George W. Bush. She's one of the co-hosts of The Five, very unapologetically pro-Trump, though not as crazy as Janine Pirro or Jesse Waters. We'll get to the clips in question, but I first want to draw your attention to how convicted felon Donald Trump was so triggered by it. In all caps, why does Fox News put on so many Biden people like Michael Tyler, communications director for Biden, who spewed lies with very little pushback? Amazing. Right? Because, of course, in Trump's eyes, anything other than outright sycophantic loyalty to him is proof that, Fox is full of rhinos. He constantly criticizes them. For example, they recently put out a poll which showed that President Biden is in the lead over Trump, and he went off on Truth Social, Truth Central, and we covered it in a video. Now, in response to this, the Biden-Harris campaign hit him with a, "You mad, Donald?" Funny stuff. I do want to play the clips in question, though, because Michael Tyler is a very gifted communicator and someone who did make a very strong case, effectively in the lion's den. We're going to start with this clip here.
What will Biden be able to do tonight to talk to black voters who are tuning in, who have walked away from his campaign?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that tonight it's an opportunity to actually break through to a larger slice of the electorate that hasn't been paying as much attention as you and I have, right? You still have a lot of Americans who have not begun to tune into the choice in this election. And in an increasingly fractured and fragmented media environment, opportunities like tonight allow the president to talk about his historic record of accomplishment for Black America, record low Black unemployment during this term, Black wealth growing by 60% since before the pandemic, record number, the fastest rate of Black small business growth in a generation. And of course, it's an opportunity to contrast that against the damage that Donald Trump caused to Black America when he was in power. I think the only things that went up for Black America at the end of Donald Trump's first term were the unemployment rate and the uninsured rate,
right? Not to mention all of the incredible.
Great response from Michael Tyler. And we'll get into Dana Perino's interjections. Again, she is pro-Republican. She's pro-Trump. She's going to try to push back on this to the best of her ability. But yeah, an incredibly compelling case there where he's talking about, listen, despite what MAGA Republicans say, like Byron Donalds, Tim Scott, and others, President Biden's record when it comes to Black America is just objectively better. Greater funding for HBCUs, lower Black unemployment, better Black business startups, et cetera, and so forth. By any objective metric, Biden's better. And this is something that doesn't really penetrate the Fox media ecosystem, right? They do their best to conceal the facts, inconvenient facts, which are most facts for Republicans, from the viewers. So with that in mind, this comes right after Dana Perino interjects and tries to offer a pro-Trump counter position or counter framing of the issue.
A lot of Black voters are saying that the economy is the most important thing to them. And they're looking back and saying, like, I paid a lot less, or I had to charge my customers a lot less than I do now. And so can Biden provide some sort of explanation for that, and then a vision going forward that would be different from what people felt during Trump?
Oh, absolutely, because the economy that Donald Trump inherited was on the rise. By the end of his term in office, he'd run it into the ground. Black businesses were shuttered across this country. What Joe Biden has done is he cut, because of his mismanagement as president of the United States, fundamentally failing to manage a threat to the American people. And that was the end result. The mess that Joe Biden inherited and the progress that we have made since then speaks for itself. 15 million jobs.
Do you think that President Biden would have kept businesses open?
800,000 manufacturing jobs.
Would President Biden have kept businesses open during the pandemic?
I think the president has proven that he is far more capable of handling the job of commander-in-chief and protecting American citizens, which is the primary duty of the president of the United States. He's proven that since the day he took office. In the economic record of 15 million jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, the work that he has done to cut black child poverty in half, to lower costs for Americans, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month for our seniors, capping prescription drug out-of-pocket costs at $2,000 annually for seniors, the work that we're going to do in a second term to make sure that a billionaire never pays less in taxes than a school teacher and a nurse. That is the economic contrast that we're going to draw against Donald Trump, whose only economic policies for his second term is more tax breaks for the ultra-wealthy, more corporate giveaways. Moody's is now saying that Donald Trump's economic policies would spike inflation and likely cause another recession in 2025. Okay. So that's the choice that the American people are going to see on the debate stage.
I would say this, you represent your boss very well and make a good case, and we'll see how all of those issues are dealt with tonight.
To get a concession like that from Dana freaking Perino, folks, we've covered Dana Perino on the 5. Is she the craziest among them? No. But she is very partisan. She makes it abundantly clear, both in her capacity as a straight news journalist and then an opinion commentator on the 5. For her to be stunned by Michael Tyler's delivery of facts is, again, the gifted rhetoric. It's just incredible. I mean, Michael Tyler should be like on cloud 9 right now that he got such a concession and an endorsement from someone so partisan in enemy territory. But I mean, he packs so much in there, right? The COVID thing is really a big one. So that was really the crux of Dana Perino's opposition. She's like, listen, she does what Trump loyalists do. They want to give Trump all of the credit for 2017, 2018, 2019, and give him none of the credit for 2020, or none of the blame, rather, for 2020, right? But as Michael Tyler points out, and as we pointed out on this channel, it's objectively true that Donald Trump inherited a good recovering economy from President Obama. It's a fact, right? But Perino and other Republicans want you to forget about that. They want you to pretend that either Donald Trump inherited nothing or Donald Trump inherited everything bad, and he built that economy single-handedly, just himself. But then when it collapsed on his watch, when he was responsible for managing it and managing the federal response to COVID, he shouldn't get blamed for that. Again, it's Republican gerrymandering of blame. They want to give Republicans all the credit and none of the blame, but they would never do that for Democrats. And Michael Tyler didn't fall into the trap. He said, listen, Donald Trump had an obligation to manage this crisis as the president of the United States, and he did. And he didn't manage it well. As we've talked about, if he made good faith efforts, consistent efforts to follow the science, to use the power of the bully pulpit to rally Republican governors and politicians and, his voters, his cultish voters, to take the pandemic seriously, and there was still a disaster, then I would be considerably less inclined to blame him for it, because then I could say Trump did the best he could. But Trump didn't do the best he could. Or if he did do the best he could, then he is woefully unfit for office. That's the difference. And again, Dana Perino and others would never grant that concession to a Democrat if the shoe was on the other foot. They would say, it doesn't matter how insurmountable the challenge is. A Democrat's in office, they're president, they have the responsibility. So good on Michael Tyler for not falling into that trap. Other things he mentioned that I want to point out, it is true, one of the finest financial firms in the world, Moody's Analytics, did an analysis of Donald Trump's proposed policies, and they concluded that it would fuel inflation. I thought that was the very thing that Republicans oppose. As we've talked about in previous videos, 16 Nobel laureate economists, the top in their field, say that Trump's policies would detonate an inflation bomb. We also pointed out that Trump's policies are so bad that even though 70% of Fortune 500 and 100 CEOs are Republican and have been inclined to financially donate to Republicans because they're ideologically predisposed to them, because they believe they benefit from them financially, 0 are directly donating to Donald Trump, even though he's promising to cut taxes for them. Think about that. He's a Republican. They are predisposed to back Republicans, and he is proposing incredibly generous tax cuts to them. But he is so incoherent, he is so deranged, and his macroeconomic policies are so unstable for the country that they're not inclined to donate to him. What does that say about how terrible his agenda is? As we also discussed in a previous video, the conservative Committee for a Responsible Fiscal Budget did an analysis of Trump's spending and President Biden's spending. And the fact of the matter is Donald Trump added much more to the national debt and blew up the deficit to a far greater extent than President Biden. And even if you control for COVID-era bipartisan spending, Trump still contributed more to the national debt and to our deficit. So he is, by any objective measure, more fiscally irresponsible than President Biden by the conservative standard. And then another thing I want to add here, because it gets brought up a bunch, this notion of energy independence. Republicans lie and say that we are not energy independent in this country. But the fact of the matter is we have a greater degree of energy independence under President Biden and energy production under President Biden than we ever did under Donald Trump. So we have the facts on our side. President Biden's macroeconomic agenda, his macroeconomic record is just objectively better than Trump's. The problem is connecting that to consumer sentiment, to feelings about it, because Republicans have enjoyed an entrenched advantage with respect to economic polling. We have to break that. It's going to take a lot of effort. You and I have to step up and say, actually, no, the facts are on the Democrat side, and here is the proof. Let me know what you think in the comments.